Right in the middle of my vegetable bed, there is a cheap plastic pipe sticking out of the soil. Nothing fancy, nothing pretty. Just
I
a
don't
plain
remember
pipe with a
burying this
lid on
here.
top. If you walked
Is it
past
connected
it,
to anything?
you would
Looks
probably think it
unfinished.
was some unfinished garden project, maybe even a mistake. But here is the strange part. That little pipe is quietly feeding my garden every single day. I do not turn a compost pile. I do not haul bags of fertilizer from
No,
the
thank
store.
you, my friend.
I do not measure powders,
We don't need that here.
mix liquids,
The garden
or
provides
follow
its
some
own.
complicated feeding schedule. I just drop a few kitchen scraps inside, close the lid, and let the soil do the work. Under the surface, something is happening that most gardeners never see. Worms are coming in, eating, moving through the bed, and leaving rich natural fertilizer right where the roots need it most. It almost feels too simple to work. But once you understand what that pipe is really doing underground, you may never look at garden waste the same way again. Most people hear the word compost and immediately picture a big bin in the corner of the yard. And honestly, that is where a lot of people give up. The bin takes space. It can smell bad. You have to keep adding the right balance of wet stuff and dry stuff. Then you have to turn it, wait for it, check it, and hope it breaks down the way it is supposed to. And even after all that work, you are still not done. You still have to shovel the finished compost out and carry it back to the garden beds. That is a lot of steps for something nature already knows how to do. I am not saying regular composting is bad. It works. But for a lot of home gardeners, it becomes one more chore, one more thing to manage. And when life gets busy, the compost pile gets ignored. That is why this pipe idea feels different. It removes most of the work. Instead of making compost somewhere else, you let the process happen right where the plants are growing. The big shift is this. Stop bringing fertilizer to the plants and start bringing the food source to the soil life. That is really what this pipe does. You are not trying to make a perfect compost pile above ground. You are creating a small feeding station underground. The scraps go into the pipe. The smell of that breaking down food moves through the soil. Worms and microbes pick up the signal and come toward it. Then they do what they already do best. They break it down, digest it, move around, and slowly spread fertility through the bed. The roots do not have to wait for you to carry compost over later. The whole process is happening right beside them. It is simple, but it changes the way you think about gardening. The soil is not just dirt holding the plant up. It is alive. And when you feed that living system in the right place, it can take care of far more than people realize. Earthworms are one of those things most gardeners barely think about, but they are doing some of the most important work under the soil. They are like tiny fertilizer factories that never stop moving. When a worm eats old leaves, soft scraps, and broken down organic matter,
These
it does
worm
not just make
castings
that
are the
waste
key.
disappear.
It's
It
how we
turns it
turn
into something
simple
much better
kitchen
for the
waste
soil.
into the
As worms
richest
move, they
soil
leave behind
food
castings,
you can
which are
imagine.
basically rich worm-made fertilizer. And they do this right where your plant roots are trying to grow. But that is only part of it. Every tunnel they make opens the soil a little more. Heavy soil gets more air. Water can move down instead of just sitting on top. Roots have an easier time spreading out. The soil also holds moisture better because it is not packed tight like concrete. That is why a garden with healthy worm activity feels different when you touch it. It is darker, softer, and more alive. You are not forcing the soil to work. You are letting the worms rebuild it from the inside. The pipe works because worms are very good at finding food underground. They do not need to see it. They do not need someone to guide them. Once kitchen scraps start breaking down inside that pipe, they release a smell into the soil. Not a smell you notice from across the yard, but a slow chemical signal that spreads through the damp earth. Worms can sense that. A banana peel, coffee grounds, soft vegetable scraps, even old salad greens. All of that starts sending out a message. Food is here, and the holes in the pipe let that message move outward in every direction. So the pipe becomes more than a container. It becomes a feeding station. Worms start coming toward it because the soil around it tells them exactly where to go. That is the part I love most. You are not trapping worms. You are not buying worms and dumping them in. You are simply creating the right signal in the right place and letting the worms respond naturally. The smartest part of this whole setup is that the fertilizer does not stay inside the pipe. If it did, it would just be a small compost tube sitting in the dirt. Useful, but not that special. What makes it powerful is the movement. Worms go into the pipe to eat, then they leave. And when they leave, they carry that work out into the garden bed. They move through the soil around your plants. They make tunnels. They loosen tight spots. They drop castings as they travel. So instead of you spreading compost by hand, the worms spread it for you. Slowly, quietly, all around the root zone. That is why the pipe can affect more than just the few inches right beside it. It creates a busy underground path. Food goes in one place, but the benefits move outward. And that is the beauty of it. You are not trying to control every inch of the garden. You are giving soil life a reason to show up, then letting it do what it already knows how to do. Here is the big difference between worm castings and regular fertilizer. Most store-bought fertilizer is built around those 3 numbers on the bag.
You
Nitrogen,
can feed your plants
phosphorus,
with this
and
chemical
potassium,
fertilizer,
NPK.
or you can
And yes,
build healthy
plants need
soil
those things,
with
but a lot
these
of chemical
worm
fertilizer
castings.
works fast,
The choice
maybe
is
too fast.
clear for
It
better
gives the plant a quick
vegetables.
push. Then much of it can wash away when you water or when it rains. So the plant gets a short boost, and then you have to come back and feed it again.
The
Worm
rain
castings
washes
work
the
more
quick
like real
fertilizer
food for the
away,
soil.
but
They
healthy
release
soil
nutrients
rich in
slowly,
worm
in a way
castings
the roots
absorbs
can
the
use
water
over time,
slowly,
and they bring
feeding
more
the
than
roots
just NPK.
directly.
They carry helpful microbes, the kind that live around roots and help plants take in what they need. They also contain humic acids, which help improve the soil itself. Sandy soil can hold moisture better. Heavy soil can breathe a little easier. Roots can spread with less struggle. That is why worm castings feel different from a quick fertilizer hit. They do not just feed the plant for a moment. They help rebuild the place the plant is growing in. The materials are almost too simple. You do not need a fancy compost system. You do not need a big tumbler, a special bin, or some expensive garden kit. All you really need is a piece of PVC pipe or a plastic bucket with a lid. A pipe around 4 to 6 inches wide works well because it gives you enough room for scraps without taking over the whole bed. For length, something around 18 to 24 inches is a good size for most home gardens. You also need a drill and a drill bit because the lower part of the pipe needs holes for worms to move in and out. The lid matters too. It keeps flies out, keeps animals from digging around, and helps hold moisture inside. I also like to keep some dry cardboard, shredded paper, or dry leaves nearby. That stuff is useful when the pipe gets too wet or starts to smell too strong. Simple materials, but when you put them together right, they create a living feeding station under the soil. Start by drilling holes in the lower 2/3 of the pipe. Do not be shy with the holes. You want plenty of openings because this is how worms get in, get out, and move through the bed. Think of the holes like little doorways, not drainage holes. Space them a couple of inches apart and scatter them all around the pipe. Once that is done, dig a hole near the center of your garden bed. The center matters because you want the worms to spread out in every direction. If the pipe is stuck way off to one side, most of the activity stays there. But when it sits closer to the middle, the whole bed has a better chance of benefiting. Bury the pipe so most of it is underground with just a few inches sticking above the soil. That top part is your loading area, where you drop in kitchen scraps. Leave the bottom open if you can, or cover it loosely with mesh if you are worried about clogging. Then put the lid on. That is it. The setup is simple, but the placement and the holes are what make it work. More access means
As you can
more
see,
worm traffic.
placing the pipe
More
too
worm
close to
traffic
the
means
edge
more
leaves
natural
the soil
fertilizer
dry.
moving through the roots.
Move it to the
What you
center
put into
and the
pipe
worms
matters
thrive.
a lot. You want food scraps that break down cleanly and do not turn the whole thing into a stinky mess. The best stuff is simple plant waste from your kitchen. Banana peels are great. Vegetable scraps work well. Apple cores, wilted lettuce, soft greens, coffee grounds, and used tea bags are all good choices. Just make sure the tea bag does not have a metal staple. Crushed eggshells can go in too, but crush them small so they break down easier. A little plain white rice or plain pasta is okay once in a while, but do not overdo it. I also like to add torn up cardboard, shredded paper, or dry leaves. That dry material helps balance the wet scraps and keeps the pipe from getting sour. Think of it like feeding the soil, not dumping trash. Keep
We
it
just
simple.
dropped the
Keep
kitchen
it mostly
scraps
raw.
right into this
Keep
pipe.
it plant-based.
The worms
When you
down
do
here
that,
break it
the
all
worms
down,
can handle the
turning it
rest.
into rich,
There are a few
healthy
things I
soil
would
for
never
the
put in
vegetables.
this pipe. Meat,
pipe
fish,
is
and
for the
dairy
garden
are at the top
only.
of the list.
Keep the meat,
They break
fish,
down in a
and
way
dairy
that can smell
separate,
awful,
far away
attract
from the
pests,
crops.
and push
We
worms
must
away instead of
maintain
pulling them in.
cleanliness.
Greasy food is another problem. Anything covered in oil, butter, sauce, or heavy seasoning can throw the whole system off. Cooked leftovers may seem harmless, but once they are full of salt, spices, and fat, they are not great for a worm feeding station. I would also be careful with citrus peels. A small piece here and there is not the end of the world, but too much orange, lemon, or lime peel can make the inside too acidic. And do not use scraps that may be covered in pesticides or herbicides. The whole point is to build up worm life, not poison it. So the rule is simple. If it smells strong, feels greasy, came from an animal, or might carry chemicals, leave it out. You will not see results overnight, and that is okay. This is not a quick chemical boost. It is a living system waking up. After a few weeks, you should start noticing small changes. When you open the pipe, you may see dark, crumbly material inside. That is a good sign. The soil around the pipe may also look darker than the rest of the bed. It may feel softer, looser, and easier to crumble in your hand. That means worms and microbes are doing their work. Another sign is plant growth. The plants closest to the pipe may start looking stronger, greener, or just a little more alive than the others. The smell tells you a lot too. A healthy pipe should smell earthy, like damp soil or old leaves after rain. It should not smell rotten or sharp. If it smells bad, you are probably feeding it too much, or it is too wet. Slow down, add dry cardboard or leaves, and let it balance out. The most common mistake with this pipe is simple. People feed it too much, too fast. I get why it happens. Once you see how easy it is, you start thinking, great, I can dump all my kitchen scraps in here. But the pipe is not a trash can. It is a living system. The worms and microbes need time to break things down. If you overload it, the scraps start rotting faster than the soil life can handle. That is when the smell changes. A healthy pipe should smell earthy, like damp leaves or good garden soil. If it smells sour, rotten, or sharp, that is your warning sign. Do not panic. Just slow down. Stop adding new scraps for a few days. Add some dry cardboard, shredded paper, or dry leaves. That helps soak up extra moisture and brings the balance back. Then feed it smaller amounts next time. This system works best when you treat it like feeding worms, not throwing away garbage. Small, steady inputs are better than big, messy dumps. So when you look at that little pipe in the garden, do not think of it as a cheap piece of plastic. Think of it as a doorway into the life already waiting under your soil. You are taking scraps that would normally end up in the trash and turning them into food for worms, microbes, roots, and the whole garden bed. You are not buying another bag of fertilizer. You are not dragging compost across the yard. You are not forcing the soil to act alive. You are feeding it in the right place and letting nature do what it has always done. That is what makes this method so powerful. It is simple, quiet, and almost invisible. But over time, it can make the soil darker, softer, and more active. And once the soil improves, the plants have a better place to grow. If this idea helped you see your garden differently, hit the like button and subscribe to Quiet Growth Lab. Leave a comment and tell me if you would try this pipe in your own garden. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.